I have documentary evidence, and by the way, what I'm about to tell you, to my knowledge, has never appeared in any major newspaper or magazine in America. Why, I don't know, probably just pure incompetence. I have documentary evidence that when George Bush told the nation on the evening of October the 7th, 2002, Cincinnati, Ohio, that Saddam Hussein was an imminent threat to the security of this country, that he was telling millions of unsuspecting Americans the exact opposite of what his own CIA told him just 6 days earlier in a classified top-secret report on October the 1st, 2002, that Hussein was not an imminent threat, that he'd only be a threat if he feared that there was going to be an imminent attack upon him by us. In other words, he'd only be an imminent threat if he was forced to fight in self-defense. And it gets worse. On October the 4th, the Bush administration put out an unclassified summary version of this classified October the 1st report. And by the way, this is only 7 days now, just 7 days before Congress authorized Bush to go to war in Iraq, October the 11th. And the Bush administration put out this unclassified version so they could give it to Congress and the American people. And this unclassified version came to be known as the White Paper. And in this White Paper, the conclusion of U.S. intelligence that Hussein was not an imminent threat to the security of this country was completely deleted. Every single one of those all-important words was taken out. So Congress and the American people did not see any of this. And the question I have is, how evil, how perverse, how sick, how criminal can George Bush and his people be? And yet, unbelievably, there's no other word for it, they got away with all of that, all of this. And as I told you earlier, over 100,000 innocent human beings are presently in their graves right now because of it. Let me give you words from George Bush's own mouth, his own lips, that prove he knew he was lying to the American people when he said that Hussein was an imminent threat to the security of this country. The date was January the 31st, 2003. Bush met with British Prime Minister Tony Blair in the Oval Office and 6 of their top aides for 2 hours. And among those aides was Blair's chief foreign policy advisor, David Manning. I'm going to be talking about the Manning memo, not the Downing Street memo that many of you have heard about. Kind of ambiguous. If I prosecuted Bush, I would use it, but I would never go to court on the Downing Street memo. This is the Manning memo. Very, very little coverage in the media. I only saw one article on it, back page of the New York Times. And then since then, I've confirmed it from other sources over in Britain. So after this meeting in the Oval Office for 2 hours between Bush, Blair, and 6 of their top aides, Manning prepared a memo summarizing what was said at the meeting. And it was stamped, quote, extremely sensitive, unquote. And in that memo, among other things, Manning wrote that George Bush, not Blair, George Bush, was so worried about the failure of UN inspectors to find weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that he started talking about 3 possible ways to, quote, provoke a confrontation, unquote, with Hussein, one of which, Bush said, was to fly U-2 reconnaissance aircraft over Iraq, painted, obviously falsely, in United Nations colors. And Bush said if Hussein fires on them, he'll be violating UN resolutions, and that would justify our going to war. So here we have the situation where George Bush is telling the American people, telling the world, that Hussein was an imminent threat to the security of this country. But behind closed doors, this very small man was talking about how to provoke Hussein into a war. And I don't have to tell you that if Bush honestly believed that Hussein was an imminent threat to the security of this country, by definition, the thought of provoking Hussein into a war would never, ever, ever have entered his mind.